Welcome back, everyone. Here we are, episode 17 of the Leonis Report. JB and I back again this week. JB, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Had a good 4th of July with the family. Had a few days off from work, and unfortunately the weather hasn't really been cooperating for us around here. I've been getting a lot of rain. Yeah, it was at least good to have a few days off and kind of relax a bit. How about you?
Definitely. Same. Yeah, was out at a baseball game for the fourth fireworks show, and this weekend did a little wine trip with the girlfriend, had some
Oh,
tastings, and took advantage of like the 4 hours of sunlight we got. So it was nice, nice. Other than that,
very
just
nice.
doing the regular gaming. I'm part of the beta for the Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis at the moment, so I haven't put a lot of time into that, but it's been fun too. Just throwing some extra games here and there.
Yeah, I've seen some people talk about it. It looks cool. Yeah, I know that I'm interested to learn more about the multiplayer aspects because I don't know if I need to play another like single player Final Fantasy VII game, but I think if the multiplayer looks interesting, maybe I'll check it out.
So my big thing is just lore related. That game, I don't need to play an abridged version of Seven and Crisis Core. I know exactly what happens. What I really wanted and needed, and it seems like obviously off topic here, but I know Seven is trying to go with this like parallel universe potential thing.
Hmm.
That I was thinking that this could be kind of another angle of that, and the beta at least isn't. So if the game comes out and the lore is not there, I'm a hard pass. But yeah, just today we obviously have a ton to go over. We have Galzahk's announcement being pushed forward way ahead of schedule, coming out alongside Dark Golem. We have Guild Raids coming out, which has been quite some time since we had them, and they're doing some major changes here in terms of calculations and scores from what we're typically used to. We have a bunch of +6 equipment awakenings as well, which we haven't really had that many as of late. If they are, they've been kind of off the beaten path, kind of whatever. Whole slew of unit awakenings, not only transcendences but also MA2s, and we have some really cool JP news as well. With obviously Melnia came out last week, talked a little bit louder about her, but her vision card is very noteworthy. The Sahagin Prince also coming out, vision card in Esper, and yeah, we got some good questions here to polish things off. So overall, pretty good day. We'll kick things off with Galzahk, though, who's the new Earth 50 cost acquisition unit coming in here a month early. What do you think? Earth meta kind of being rounded out. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is really like a shift up of the schedule. Like we've been kind of really off pace with what JP kind of in the order that they did things. Galzak is kind of continuing that. He's coming in at least a month early.
Yep.
Same thing with the guild raids. That guild raid actually was, I think maybe a week or two after RAF. So that's also like a month or so early. A lot of these awakenings are kind of in line with that. So they are definitely shifting up and kind of changing things here in a big way. And we've talked a little bit about it in the last couple of weeks. It seems like probably going to be maybe some summer units, maybe a summer global in there too, in addition to what JP gets. So we'll talk about. Well, I guess we'll know more next week. But Galzak, I think, very nice MR unit, and he was used actually extensively in JP, even in Guild War, like as kind of a dedicated support behind Bradley and Dialdo.
Yep.
Got a decent amount of play there, pretty well received, I think, in terms of the players. And the nice thing is, he's similar to the Dia that we just got. You can completely and freely grind him out, bulk up his stats with the reincarnation just by going and doing his acquisition quest. Obviously, it's going to cost you MR scrolls and statues and those kind of resources, but from a mind sphere perspective, free. You can get that from the quest. So I think he's bulky and he's got a ton of magic. Those stats I think are going to help him pump out even more healing. So maybe not a bad candidate if you're kind of going in on the Earth meta.
I don't disagree at all. On paper, he is exactly what they need. As far as I can tell, I've never really seen a 50 cost unit ever contend with just, just regular Guild War. I just haven't seen it. I know JP tinkered with it. The thing for me is Bradley is so good on his own. Dialdo is very good as well. I could see this being one of the few cases where that is a feasible thing. I am slightly concerned about the agility value here, particularly when we talk about transcending him or reincarnating him to max. Agility is not one of those stats that gets upgraded, and so although he can fit all the bills on paper, if he ends up that turn order kind of falling behind a little bit, or even some of his survivability, if it's just a step down, I don't have high hopes for it, but I certainly could see it being a very unique case because he is right down the middle, exactly what you would want and need. Because you're right, he's got that bulk, some good metrics with some AOE res as a devout job. That's one of my favorites here for some of the insta heals. He's got also the AP restore on a giant AOE as well as part of that. He's also got the Time Mage and White Mage sub jobs, so you have some flexibility there for what you want to do, whether it's going with some of that either protect and shell to offset some of what Bradley and Dialdo do. If you want to go more for the time age and the haste and whatnot, a lot of good things there. But I don't know exactly how we'll fare in non-cost limited stuff, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, if you are going in on Dark Golem, just bring in Velis for Guild
Yes.
War.
Yeah.
But if you don't have Velis, or maybe you don't grab Dark Golem, maybe you don't have some of the older Rainbow AoE res cards, I think Galzahk can be good. I think to be competitive though, you probably are going to want to throw some scrolls into him just so that he doesn't get taken out in one or two hits. The thing that's he is very similar to Velis. We have kind of, I think, looked at him in a kind of a future look before, but he's got like kind of a little bit of an AP battery with his heals. Not quite as much as Velis. His is 10 versus 15 on snow healing, but still very solid.
Yep.
If he gets that onto Brad, that's going to help him keep going. And obviously the healing is his magic, like we said, pretty strong. If you reincarnate him, he can get, he'll be sitting at, close to 700 magic, before gearing up, which is very, very strong for
Yeah.
an MR unit. His magic is solid.
Absolutely. And he's got enough healing power too that if all it takes is just one heal to keep your Bradley going and he just carries the fight, honestly, that's all you really need. It doesn't take much more than that. So I'm very happy. If I had to guess with the timing of things, although they might be ushering in, and maybe intentionally so, some balance changes, I also do think this is their way to potentially keep global just on its toes, quite honestly, in terms of resource management. We obviously have a propensity to hoard viz and know exactly what the timeline is, and people are very deliberate with some of that. All of a sudden, we start shuffling around some of these timelines, throwing some wrenches into things. I think that's their way of essentially not only adding in the variability, but just making people spend in places that they didn't expect to. And even if on one week you catch someone off guard, for instance, you release Dark Golem a week earlier than you thought, and you have to spend to maybe pull, that's a win for Gumi, if you know what I mean. So even that week difference, if you weren't prepared, I think that's starting to be some of the case. And I think the same thing with the guild raid, same concept, where if you were maybe slower building a character because you thought you had some time before the guild raid came, just things like that. I think this is their way to kind of add that variability to not let us rest on the timeline.
So it was actually when Galzahk kind of first came out in JP, I played around and did some builds with him. I'm just pulling that up now, but with the Dark Golem Vision card, I mean, I suppose you could use Dreams of Heroism as well with in a mono Earth team, but I had him at 46 area resist before his self buff,
Awesome.
which I think he can get like another. I want to say it's like 15 or 20 from his buffs if I remember correctly.
So he does,
Um,
but that buff is the one that we typically turn off, I think, for devout. So that one, I guess it'd be hit or miss whether or not it actually works. But that 20 AoE resistance by itself, it might be worth using that ability alone. Yeah.
Yeah, so the nice thing about his though is that his is instant cast, so he gets the EX upgrade on that one. So I know that for other devouts, like you said, you turn it off because it has the long casting time and whatnot. It's hard to maybe hit some units if their agility is lower
I
and
did not pick up on
whatever.
that.
But
That is so
yeah,
much better. So much better.
so his gives the HP, it gives the bunch of defense and spirit. It gets some, you definitely want to have that buff on for him because he gets the healing power and the AoE res. So
Yep, that's a
yeah.
significant game changer for him. I agree. That's a good call out. Thank you for that. You mentioned obviously there already is a 20 AoE res card for Earth. It's actually very good in that the stat is both equally for attack and magic, so very much a flexible vision card for many people. You might look at Dark Golem, and Dark Golem is the same 20 AoE resistance, but it's also 8 defense and 38% acquired AP. Most would look at that 8 defense and kind of shrug. And to be fair, I think that's good. I think there's good reason to. 8 defense is fine, but I don't think it's a huge game changer. The 38% acquired AP, I think that's just one of those things that's really for Dialdo and just some extra uptime of damage for the Earth units. I don't know if that's a significant upgrade over Dreams of Heroism for the stats themselves, but it's really for the combination of bringing ice into the fold, where that's the obviously enormous upside there. And ice in particular, you start talking about agility cards if you want to throw the last wall vision card in there, depending upon what your balance of teams are. You have some very cool AP things here that could bring some units just into fruition that didn't have them before.
So actually, in that build I was talking about, I had dreams in the sub slot, so doubling up the nice thing about that card is it does have HP on it as well. It's not going to be as much as like Golem or anything, but it's still you can get like 10% or 8 or 10% from in the secondary, which is pretty nice. And then I put Sheraton on Dialdo
Yes.
because it has in the limited bestowed, you get AoE res there. So
Yep.
that pumps up his area resist on top of that. So very, very bulky team. If you do manage to get both of those cards.
Definitely. Yeah, Earth is one of the better, at this point, well rounded vision card sets where you do get a couple that have really good penetrations on them. They have some nice blends. Eleficaris, although it's Pierce attack up, that's that 8% agility. There's some flex options you can play with. I know not everyone has the Halloween card. That's that 15% agility for them, but regardless, they've got a lot of good stuff there that you can build a variety of teams pretty handily with them. And Dark Golem only adds to that, obviously.
And they did announce that there was a global upgrade on this as usual
Yes.
for our vision cards, and it's a pretty good one. So for Earth units, it's going to get unit resistance and lightning resistance. I'm guessing that's going to be 10% to each. Kind of based on what they've done lately. I think that makes this card much better. At least if you're putting it on Earth units. It would have been nice if it was on for Ice units as well. I would have liked it even better, but
Yeah.
still pretty decent upgrade. Get a bunch of defense from the card and then the acquired AP. Very nice for Bradley as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great upgrade here. I know one of the things that's kind of behind the curve, there's not a lot of lightning resistance on any Espers, where there's usually at least one Esper in the game that's got that bulky 20 to 25%, and lightning res doesn't have that. So the fact that you now have a vision card that can kind of offset that by having the 10% lightning resistance, definitely a nice value add there that I think they got creative with adding that. I think it's a really good addition to the vision card overall.
I know that this is going to be coming with the new Esper. It's a tanking Esper. I've heard a lot of people saying that they really don't think it's good, like just purely based on the agility. I really don't agree with it at all. I
At
mean,
all.
I use those low agility tanking Espers on my tank every time I use a tank,
Yep.
basically. I mean, there's rarely do I use non-tanking Espers on those units. So, he's going to be right in line, with Demon Wall and Death Machine and Golden Armon and all these other guys. So, would it have been nice if he was higher? Of course, but
Right.
I think that's just kind of how they give these tanking espers, kind of enhanced board nodes with, better defensive effects than you can find on other ones. So
Definitely.
that's kind of the trade-off there.
I feel like I remember when this first was announced in JP, someone had made a thread on the subreddit trashing this Esper, and they were really like vehemently going at it that they thought it was a terrible ad. And they were obviously comparing things like Dark Tetrasilphid and Dark Odin as like the barometers to compare, and they're obviously very fast and great stats. And I think you and I came to the defense where it's just one of those misconceptions that people have. Obviously, we always harp on high agility being very, very important. That being said, there are times, particularly for tanks, especially for tanks, where yeah, it's nice, but the stats of letting your tank do their actual job are more important. So for Dark Golem, the 5% human resistance alone is exceptionally strong in that it's an impenetrable type of resistance to add on to it. It obviously has defense, which most other Espers have, but you add in the 5% HP. You have the flex option for missile resistance, but the big thing is the wind resistance. And there are Espers that currently do have wind resistance on them, but they don't get as high here, where you can get upwards of 20 wind resistance on here. And when you fold that into putting it on a tank like Dialdo, that's one of those things that people underrate. They always think like, oh, you can't bring Earth to a wind fight. You'd be surprised you can. You just have to gear properly for it. And even if you're not winning, you'll put up enough of a fight that they'll be empty. They have nothing in the tank by the time they're done. And that's honestly kind of a win in many other regards, that you've essentially made them expend all their resources to beat a team that people think should be very easily beatable. So this is an exceptionally good tank aspect for that reason, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can build it out to have the 5% human resistance, the 7% crit evasion, 15 defense, 5% HP, and then you can take the magic nodes on there for Dialdo. So nice that he's all simultaneously building up against his natural counter of lightning while also going against his weakness with the wind resistance, like you mentioned. So I love this Esper for Dialdo. I think if you don't manage to get it and you're a Dialdo player, Golden Armon is a good one to kind of also look to. I mean, what else could you do for wind resistance? I guess Tetrasulfid is probably the best one at 25%.
Tetris, underratedly, Glacial, the Ice Esper with the Luck nodes also has, I think it's either 15 or 25. Yeah, Glacial. So technically only has 10 on the board nodes, but 5 innately, so you get up to 15%. And I know that sounds maybe a step down from some of the others, but I just love that Esper for the versatility of the luck percentage nodes. You have missile resistance, you have attack and slash attack as well. There's a lot of good things to build out. So there's a lot of anti-wind options if you wanted to try to still plug that hole some other way.
I think the one that I've been using right now, and I think is maybe one of the best choices, is Sheraton, because you can actually that one does have WinRes on the board as well. You can get a +5, and then you can get the 5% area resistance, and then obviously the Earth attack, and then it gets the more offensive potency. So
Yep.
it's another good option.
Same here. And yeah, honestly, Earth has some of the best Espers in that regard as well. I've been using Titan with some decent success. We have the Spirit nodes. Technically has both Pierce attack and Earth attack up as well if you wanted to for Dialdo. Doesn't necessarily have some of the same impenetrable stats, but talk about rounding them out a little bit. Both that and Golem have their upsides for sure.
So I mean, kind of staying on the Earth train, we both have a bit more experience with Dialdo. How have you been liking him so far?
Love him, love him. So I added a new metric to my report card, which is the auto ease of use, and essentially like it's kind of a grade to say like how easily can people just like throw him in there and get results. I do think that he does still take some thought per se in terms of building him, where you have to really decide what are the optimal buff or two, because his TMR is technically like a first priority buff potentially. There are things you want to consider with the extra move or not on his passive ability and what that does for his movement. You also have the potential in terms of what Espers, like we talked about. You have like 4 or 5 different Esper options. So I think it's easy to potentially get him wrong and maybe not get the full upside. And his damage is a little inconsistent because it's very dependent upon enemy Pierce res, which there's no penetration for. So if they have high Pierce res, he's done. But if they have negative Pierce res, it's great. He's going to smack him for 4 to 5,000 damage. But I've had exceptional results. He is a huge step up from anything Earth had. Miraga is a good fill-in, just not. I just think different and not as good. How about you?
Same. I got him up on day one, and I've been using him since then. I was pretty excited for him. I did the whole video and everything. So yeah, he's been solid. I think the damage better than expected against most units. Obviously he can be stalled pretty easily, but
Yeah.
if he manages to get into the back line and you're hitting the Dark Finas of the worlds very easily, he's doing 5-6K. Even Sephiroth, he's not that he's okay against pierce damage. Did they even have a pierce res card that's used all that often?
I don't think they do. If they do, I don't know it off the top of my head. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it would be kind of more of a niche card, I guess. But yeah, he hits him, once the barrier's down pretty decently as well.
Yep.
Obviously, he's staying up like a champ once he gets the LB out. He's got the regen going. I've been using Mashiri next to him for the protect, so that
Yep.
got the protect and shell online, and yeah, he's holding up very, very well.
So it's funny you mention that. My favorite thing at the moment is the Vega TMR for him and he'll use that first. So you have to make sure he gets 2 opportunities to buff, because if he doesn't get that main buff of his off, it's got those 4 effects on it. That's a big loss. But if you can get those 2, I love the Vega TMR. Then opens up with his next one. If people are in range, great. He'll hit him. Obviously, a pretty decent chance to Berserk, which is a complete game changer. But even if they're not in range, you get that 3rd buff with the elemental chain resistance and the hate generation up, that 12 hate. Awesome. Like it, I love it.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed with this AI is that hate buff, which is actually very important for him to get on. He will use a TMR before that, and
Yes.
most of the ones that I tested, I was using mostly his own TMR and a couple of others. But yeah, that's one thing, especially on this map where you're going to be generally in range by turn 3. You've got at best, two buffing cycles. Yeah, you got to keep that in mind. I had to turn the TMR off on this map.
Yep. Yep. That sounds about right. Well, good. Well, either there's a lot to look forward to, and still even more so now that we have the Esper Vision card coming out. They're only going to accentuate what's happening when you particularly talk about bringing ice into the fold. So we are just getting started on that train. Not even mentioning Galzahk all over again and that potential. So good. Well, in terms of some PVE content here, we are also getting some additions with the guild raid, and there's a bunch of unique map effects here. There's one in particular that I think is very, very smart. The first one here is 100% reaction block to your entire team. There's no counter abilities being used right now. For those that don't compete for the high end scores, the counter abilities are actually the difference between achieving those top scores or not. There's so much RNG with procking those counter abilities to maximize your damage. I know a lot of people that just barely missed getting that top score because they didn't proc the one extra counter that someone else might have. They're doing some really creative things here with the effects, most notably around the damage caps here, where strike damage is getting an extra 20,000 for the damage cap. Magic attack is getting an extra 35,000, which is exceptionally out of the ordinary.
Insane.
Where magic doesn't normally get the chain because they don't get that same weapon type chain. They can element chain, but not the other way around. And so the fact that now magic attackers get that disproportionate damage cap means you will have to be creative and bring them into the fold to just really accentuate that magic upside. And there is that normal 10,000 damage cap that everyone else is getting anyway. I know guild raids are very, very popular content for many of the brightest theory crafting minds, yourself among them. You excited for this round, or are you a little burnt out, taking a breather? What are you thinking you're going into this?
I have kind of mixed feelings about the guild raid this time around, kind of post reincarnation era, because you can throw scrolls into some of these niche units and build up and get better scores, and maybe that ends up being the difference for the top score. I don't as a guild, we kind of are more casual. We're not going hardcore for like the #1 overall guild score, but I have personally always enjoyed going for the top personal scores, and
Yeah.
I was able to get that title in the past. This go around, it's like, do I really want to reincarnate Roy Mustang to 84 times just
No.
for this content that comes around, once every 3 or 4 months? And then, next time around, maybe they change the map effects where, strike damage or pierce damage or something else is kind of the top dog. So yeah, it just feels kind of bad that, scrolls are now kind of in the picture for this content. And for that reason, I think that I'm kind of maybe take a step back. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. I mean, I guess my only counter argument would be is how scarce they're making the UR scrolls currently. So if someone is using their UR scrolls for this content specifically, it's one of those things that in my heart, I'm like, you know what, more power to you. The fact that you're foregoing reincarnating units that you could be using every single day, and you're instead using it for these maybe niche units that come around once every 3 or 4 months. It's one of those things that's like, this is obviously your priority. I can't feel as bad, but I agree, it doesn't feel as good. And we kind of got a taste that with TOR. I knew with the Trials of Reckoning that was going to be our first instance of this, where they in particular, characters that were getting 140 upgrades, or people are spending antlers or reincarnations. But guild raids are a little more competitive because there's just one spot for that title. So it's just far more sweaty to get it. And there's a lot more teeth in the game that I agree doesn't feel good if you're just getting beat out for someone reincarnating a unit, which would be a massive effect.
So I mean that said, like, I'm still planning on putting out my usual video with my cheat sheets. I'm kind of starting working on that, so probably have that out later this week. But it is very interesting with the magic attack. Like you said, magic units. There's a number of chainers actually that magic chainers, but they've never been able to get into these teams for the most part because they are lacking the damage type chains.
Right.
So that you really couldn't afford, if you were going for high score, to take the damage loss to your other units because you're killing the damage type chain of slash or missile or whatever you're trying to use.
Right.
So the fact that they are basically, you're going to almost quad damage, 4 times the damage cap of your slash units now is quite crazy. Strike is going to get up there too. That's going to be a competitive one to use at 20,000 cap. And again, that's going to be in addition to the cap that they already have. So every unit, they already are getting up to 11,999.
Yep.
So add this on there, and then your damage cap cards, damage cap equipment or trust stones.
Right.
That all adds up, and you're going to see some crazy numbers, I think, when the guild raid comes along. So that's always fun to see. You know, when you see your Dark Fina with their limit burst for 172K or whatever it's going to end
Yep.
up being.
You're
That's
right. Yeah,
yeah,
whoever's using that Halloween Lucia vision card as well, they got that triple hit ability on there. I agree.
yeah. That's a huge one for this
Huge
frame.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of these because there has been some repetition where people can relatively get away with just bringing a slash team. Now they won't get number one scores, but you could get some really competitive scores just bringing your typical earth or light team and bringing them across a variety of elements. It really wouldn't matter what because they had enough imperils that you could get that chain going. I like that they've added these change ups here to just give some more theory crafting into the fold, and that's really where I appreciate this. I don't ever really strive for any kind of top scores. I really just kind of look at myself and try to challenge myself to say, listen, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to analyze the map, I'm going to look at the agility values, see where I can get some turn order things, and it's really just like good practice, I think, to better understand the mechanics. And for those that are trying to get their feet wet in manual play, I feel like this is a really interesting way and like a non-high pressure way to get in there and really evaluate like turn order and damage and positioning, and not really worry about like someone on the other team just running circles around you, if you know what I mean.
This mode is also fun because it really highlights some units that you never see in PvP, like Luartha,
Yep.
is one of the MVPs of guild raids, or Winter Ramada is another
A
one.
huge winter mod is
Uh,
great for these. Yep.
Raychess and Farm, there's a bunch of units that really don't see the light of day otherwise. So, I always like this for that reason too. So, I think, like I said, I'll have a video out and kind of have some more details. When you said like another interesting thing about this raid is that they are putting enhanced elemental resistances on the bosses too. Like for, if it's like a ice boss, they're basically, you have to take fire basically. All the other elements are going to be highly resistant. Of course, that does depend on how strong the element is. We have seen light and even fire kind of get in there and kind of steal the titles away from kind of the
Right.
intended element. But
Right.
I do like how they're kind of iterating on these guild raids and kind of making them better over time.
Exactly. Every time it comes around, it should be a brand new challenge. It shouldn't be, all right, let me copy the team I did last time and we'll do the same thing. That's boring. It's not good content.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Coming along with that, we have a bunch of plus six equipment here on some things that I think are well overdue for them. The first one that we'll talk about here are the Flan earrings, and the big upgrade here is that it's going from the 25% HP for 3 turns up to 35% HP for 3 turns. It is getting some small stat upgrades here, really nothing terribly noteworthy from just stats though. It's really the HP percent that is getting that buff. Have you used the Flan earrings at all, or do you think it's a good upgrade?
It's a pretty significant upgrade in the base HP on the item too.
Yes. Is
It's
it?
a Yeah, it's like another couple hundred there, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. So it is about 200 or so, give or take, HP
So
there. Yep.
yeah, so I mean, I've used this in the past, really only on Ketone, like for kind of Drain Force meme builds, and it's still like one of the best options I think for that if you're trying to kind of get a really strong Drain Force in those first few turns. And then like the base stats on it are roughly equivalent to like a Plat Robe, at least a +5 one. So it's not too bad. I don't know. I haven't used it in a while, so I'm not sure if this will be on my high priority list to upgrade. But it's decent enough.
I'm the same. And honestly, you know why I kind of overlooked that HP stat? I've become more and more cognizant lately of these stats and just how easily they're cut in half because of the trust stones on other equipment. That, right, even though this is technically a 200 HP increase, at a max of 672 or 768, that likely still may not exceed your trust stone stat. So this likely will still get cut in half. So I've become a little more dour on some of these stats and how impactful they are, but I do like that extra 10% HP for those 3 turns. The only time I've ever seen this be used is for the Catone builds for the Drain Force, absolutely. And then just some very nice applications for tanks on certain maps that are exceptionally small, where if you're just worried about someone chaining you down, 2 or 3 hits, you'd be surprised. Sometimes that extra HP does matter for the tanks, where they obviously have the most upside. But this is, I would say, overall a relatively niche item. I don't think there's a ton to look forward to for this.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about a tank that's got 44 4500 base HP, you're talking pretty significant. 1700 HP bonus there. That's
Right.
you know take away some chip damage after those first 3 turns.
Yep,
Yeah,
definitely.
not too bad.
Yeah, it is what it is. For its intended purpose, I think it's fine. But the next one here we're getting is the Knight Armor, which is one of the few armors that is very much magic oriented. Right now, it's 10% magic. It's going up to 15% magic. Slight spirit increase going from 20 to 22. Not a huge upgrade there, but kind of similarly, it's getting like 240 HP or so. So, do with that number what you will. I like this upgrade. I don't love it. I think it's well overdue. The fact that that magic resistance is just kind of niche at this time for what the things that come out. The Kefka cloth that we just got had that, but we had a little bit of a drought where there wasn't a lot of magic resistant items coming out, and for armors in particular, I don't think there was a lot of good options. So I think this is overdue. I like this upgrade for what it is.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, you think about like the total magic mitigation there with the 22 spirit and 15 magic resistance. If you're really trying to like cover somebody's weakness, like, it's you can't get much better than this one for
Exactly.
that particular damage type. Of course, magic ebbs and flows like any damage type in the meta, so it's a niche item for those purposes.
I agree. I wish being a UR item, I would have hoped for just something a little bit more because I don't think 15% is drastic considering there is more and more magic penetration now than when this originally came out. So that extra 5%, I don't know how huge it is, but I actually just used this recently on my Alphonse for a couple builds because he doesn't have a lot of great, anti-magic options. So it's still best in slot for what you're looking for magic. So I agree it's overall a good upgrade, very much welcomed.
Yep.
And saving the best for last, this is the most significant, is the Survival Vest, where the Survival Vest, again, another raid item. This formerly was single target resistance at 10. It's going up to 15, so you get an extra 5 single target resistance. Obviously, the same thing here, getting a little bit extra of HP, not a huge amount, but 200 or so. This is well overdue for that unit resistance. Do you still use the Survival Vest?
I mean, I can't remember the last time I didn't use it, to be honest with you. This one is one of my most used pieces of gear, and it's getting significantly better.
Yep.
If you have not farmed this item, hit the raid revival this week hard and get a couple of these, to be honest. Alaya is coming, and you will want to have this item.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah, this it's had some competition with the pod accessory, and for the females, the silent solar rays I think is at this moment better than this in my opinion. But once it gets this upgrade, this is a massively good upgrade for how good this piece of equipment is. It's amongst one of the best you can get in the game for raid stuff. So yeah, very much welcomed. With the raid revival coming back, opportunities to farm some of this equipment. Do you have any raid gear in particular that you say top 3 that you really like use most often, or things that you use most frequently?
The black garb, I think, is definitely. I'm a big evade player. I use that constantly. That's an excellent one. I think Alex Ring, I think, is got to be number one priority for any newer player, or maybe you just haven't gotten it in the past. You want a couple Alex Rings at +6,
Yep.
at least. Brigandine, I think, is one that I use all the time. I'd say those are probably my top 3.
Absolutely in agreement. The Brigandine is a must equip in almost all of my units for when I can. The Black Garb, the same idea for evade units, but I actually own a +6 of the shield build of this. Very underrated in my opinion. The shield build offers 19 defense while still giving you 20 defense pen and the 10% dark resistance. So while sure, the evasion rate of 15 really doesn't matter because it's probably not going on an evade unit, I think for bulk, when you talk about getting that defense pen and the dark res, I love cloth at +6 as well. And yeah, total agreement. The Alex Ring is the other, S tier. I have 3 copies of Alex Ring +6. I'll frequently will run parties with all 3 of them just wearing an Alex Ring. It's that good.
I'm gonna throw one other one in the ring, and it's not necessarily good or amazing right now. It's pretty good now, and it's that marshmallow accessory. That one just got its +6 in JP, and it got significantly better because all the resistances went to 50%
Right.
instead of 25%. So at 50%, you're starting to get to the point where you can even resist off some limit bursts out there that may have some of those statuses like sleep or confusion or paralyzed or any of these. So,
Yep.
in addition to nice accuracy, it's got, you can't find much better for those particular status effects.
No, I love it. I think it's an excellent call out there. It's just one of those items that it may seem overpowered at 50% resistance, where you can basically mitigate the majority of things. But then again, if you're bringing it to a fight where people don't have status effects, it's not that it's worthless, but it loses the majority of its best value. And so a little bit boom or bust. You have to time it right, but when you do time it right, you should be rewarded for taking that risk and bringing it. So I love that. I think it's a great call out. And if I could also just my own call out here, I still do defense bracer +6. I think is underratedly one of the best accessories. For the defense value it brings at 18 is exceptionally good. Getting that extra turn of missile resistance of 25 and the free disable resistance. There's a lot of disable in the game between Dwayne and what Fire Evade brings and King Mon, obviously, that I think is just overall one of the better ones too. So for those that have not farmed those up, yeah, everything we just mentioned, get 2 to 3 copies guaranteed.
Get those multis.
Yes, that's sir. So, all right, well, we have some unit awakenings here as well. Also, some MA2s. The big awakening kicking is off here is a character that we haven't seen in the limelight for quite some time, Black Rose Elena, or Black Rose Helena, however you want to pronounce that. Basically, getting a negative 200 additional attack skill activation time. She's getting 10% agility and a passive upgrade that she's getting 40 AoE resistance when her HP is above 80%. Is it enough? Will you transcend her? Do you like this?
I do like it. I think it's an above average upgrade. It's a nice upgrade for her. She's not a meta unit. She's not going to be a meta unit. She's good though. I think especially when you think about Raph coming in, you could make a pretty nice dark magic party with her. She's going to have very nice area resist if you have another card in the party. So I think that she's usable. Certainly when you think about one of the ways that people try to get at dark is with high light resistance. Helen has always been one of the best tools against that. Like, not only does she have the amazing Imperil that she's known for, but she has some really nice non-elemental attacks as well. Sometimes those didn't always come out because of the long cast times that were on them. So, getting the reduction here is going to help that out significantly. So,
Yeah.
not bad, not shabby.
I agree. It's an excellent upgrade. I won't transcend personally. I don't think it's enough to move the needle for her and getting her in that team. But for many players, I think she's still a very, very solid unit. For those coming into the game that are able to get her to 140, because I know she's one of those units I think you can get very luckily on one of the beginner pulls, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. But regardless, good investment for a lot of newer players that this is a good upgrade.
And she is actually pretty decent for this guild raid too, because she's a 2-hit chain magic attack. So
yep,
keep that in mind.
Yeah, talk about the Spirit Imperil, the Dark Imperil. There's a lot there. That's good stuff. And I've also appreciated her Spellblade sub, that if you want the Dark Slash, she can contribute. And it's Spirit scaling. It'll smack after that Spirit Imperil for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. We also have Farm, the evasive water unit coming in here. 15 slash attack, 20% slash res pen, so it's basically an offensive upgrade there for her. And her level 120 ability is getting the Ignore Sure Hit added to it. I know Farm is, I think, had some hopes for some people, but never really had her time to shine. Do you think this is the chance to jettison her there, or what do you think about the upgrade?
I don't know. The problem with Farm is that she just doesn't do enough damage, and it's nice that they try to kind of move the needle a little bit there for her with the slash attack and slash res pen. That certainly is going to help a little bit. I just don't think it's enough because I don't know, her job is just it's all kind of like single attack, unit attack based, which can be good sometimes. Like she does have like the spirit and defense and peril. She's certainly going to be very, very evasive, especially against magic damage, because she does have that typed evade that she gets with her buff.
Yep.
Significant amounts, 60%. That's massive.
Huge.
I believe she does also have access to Utsusemi as well, which is now a 2-turn buff.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, she can certainly be evasive. She can make people miss, and now that she has the sure hit now, maybe you could do something with Chunak because he has that also. Water does have 2 luck cards that can really amp that up. I just don't think that the damage is good enough, so that's kind of my reservation there.
No,
another good guild raid unit though.
Excellent, one of the best. Yeah, no, I agree. It's not enough. One of her biggest shining pieces for the longest time was on one of her abilities is the Dispel Courage and Dispel Re-Raise and the Decrease Accuracy. There's so much utility in that one ability alone, but for some reason, I think it's mostly because of the range, quite honestly. Never really worked well, the damage wasn't there, and now that those things are coming around more and more in terms of dispelling Courage and Re-Raise, that makes this less special. Obviously, with the power creep of the game, evade units are getting slightly power creep from terms of accuracy and whatnot. Obviously, there's the null sure hit, but still, there's plenty of characters that can still hit through that. I don't think it's going to do anything for her.
My dream upgrade for her would have been to make that a select two and increase the damage on it. That
Y-
remove courage and
yes,
re-raise. That would have been something that
exceptional.
would have got her into the meta, I think.
I would agree with that.
Make
Right.
it like a 165 mod, and yeah, would have been pretty good.
Yep. Well, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but for most of these characters, you either go, very heavy on the utility side, and sure, damage isn't great, but you just alter the battle all different ways. Or the damage is just disgusting, and you can't live through it, and that's it. And that's also powerful. And you get sometimes that perfect blend of both, but that's very rare. I don't think she does either of them exceptionally good at this time. We also have Elsorel getting her dream upgrade here. She's getting 20% HP, 20% slash res pen, and her 120 ability becomes a select 2 ability here. And so that select 2 is a 30% defense break. It's also a 25% agility break. And that defense break is pre-damage, also important to note, and increases AP consumption by 50% for 3 turns for the target. So their spells will cost more. A lot of utility in the one ability, and that's a great upgrade, particularly for 20 AP. That is very strong. Is that the kind of thing have you used her a lot, or do you think this will bring her to the limelight?
Outside of guild raids, I haven't used her in PvP in a very long while.
No.
I think when she was released, and even shortly into the EX era, she was a very strong PvP unit for a while. Had a lot of nice resistances she could put on the team. She was like the first Nightblade I think that we ever had in the game.
Yep.
So, the Pierce and missile resistance. She's got the Spell Blade for the magic resistance. I remember using that quite often. It's been a while. I mean, her 120 really kind of missed the mark a little bit. It was kind of trying to this attack was specializing in that AP consumption kind of debuff that she would put on, and I don't know, it just didn't really do enough. This is really nice though. They're making it a select two with the 30 defense and peril. I think that's pretty solid. I just don't know if she makes it outside of like limited kind of PvP situations.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah, her survivability is not nearly there for what you need to compete, and I still think this is a Trials of Reckoning or a Guild Raid kind of unit with the triple hit. But it's a good ability, but not for PvP, particularly with light that is completely stacked at this moment. And then we do have some SRs and MRs that are honorable mentions. I know McLeod in particular is one that I think we really like because his 120 ability is getting 40% Pierce Res Pen for 3 turns. That is exceptionally unique in the game to get Pierce Res Pen. I don't know if it's exactly going to jettison him to the top of anything outside of Limited Guild Wars, but he's still one of the best Limited Guild War units. And getting access to that is a significant buff for him, so big thumbs up on that. The others, I know Lisette we looked at too had some extra punch added to her 120 ability. I don't know if there's a whole lot to talk about though. I know Shuzelt gets some love from some people in the community here. Helena does too to some extent, but I don't know. That's all my thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, I think Helena and Marguerite are kind of more like manual units. Like Marguerite's a really nice quickener. Helena too. She's a good quicken unit. Schitzelt gets I mean, comparatively amongst all MR units, he gets a nice upgrade. He gets like a courage and a bunch of things added into like one of his main buffs. But I don't know, like Lightning, I think has like some other decent limited cost units, including Lisette here, which I would probably take in most cases over him. So
I agree. I agree. Good. All right, moving along here. The last three we have are unit MA2s that are coming, and one of them is a notorious fan favorite for quite some time. Sadali is getting his MA2. It's 10 AoE resistance, 10% HP, and a decrease of 200 attack skill activation time. Great upgrade for him.
yeah, so maybe they're trying to swing winds a little bit here with all their that's just gotten powered up. I don't know. I mean, I think at least in JP, like it didn't quite push him back into like a meta position. I think people were still satisfied with Edward and maybe a little bit Resol or Glassy,
Yep.
along with Jum. I don't know if it gets him back into the lineup. I mean, you could use him, but I don't know if he's the best choice. I think you're kind of more waiting for his dream upgrade to kind of make his stats a bit more competitive and get the upgrade, especially onto his job 25.
I would agree with that. He's still right on the cusp, though. There are a couple times we'll come to the battle and you just kind of get reminded, and you're like, "Wow, I forgot he's got that 20% all element resistance." You forget that he's got 20 AOE resistance as a buff, and this is going to give him 20 to himself. So he'll now get up to 40, not including the vision cards and whatever equipment. So there's some nice things here. I still think he's one of the unique units that he has that magic scaling missile damage, which was very overpowering for a time. He's got that imperil, some status effects. He's got a lot of things that are still very competitive with what you want to see. So overall, I do like it as an MA2. I agree you need that 140 for him to really come back to the limelight.
Yeah, once he gets that, I think he'll be right back where he was, but maybe a little bit behind right now.
Definitely, definitely. And next up, we have Eliza. She's getting 20 crit damage, 30% acquired AP, and on her 120 ability, if she procs a critical hit, she gets 10% agility for 1 turn. Overall, I think this is very smart for a missile unit. She's already very good, doesn't overtune her, but sneaky extra damage there with the 20 crit damage. The acquired AP obviously very important because she's notoriously just kind of like a Bell's unit in many cases, and that 10% agility does have some great like X factor upside, I think.
Yeah, I mean she's a unit that crits all the time, very high. She's going to be able to get that agility bonus online very, very easily. So yeah, I mean she's already a great unit. So I think we said this when she got her 140 as well. This just makes her even better. So good map for her right now if you haven't tried it out yet.
Yes, this is a great map for ice. It is good. Or then technically Renella's too is an MR unit, 20% attack, 10 unit res. I don't think it's going to do much, but we can move on.
Yeah, that's pretty whatever. You know, I think there's other options. I think for dark limited stuff.
Yes, definitely is. Well, we're going to transition to the Warm now, and keeping this kind of simple, we will look briefly at the most recent Guild War map that came out, where it's been out for roughly a week or so, maybe a little bit less than that, and kind of just getting some ideas on seeing where the trends are and what people are using for units at this time. I think I'll probably start off here kind of just looking at top 100 very casually, just seeing if there's any big dips up or down. I don't think there's any surprises here on attack or defense where this is a map that gives some earth benefit, so you are seeing the Bradleys come out to play. Sephiroth still top of the list here. You're getting a lot of wind to kind of counteract that earth here. For top 100, any names here that you're surprised to see or pictures that you're surprised to pop up on list on attack here?
I don't no, I mean I think this is exactly what we're seeing out there. And I guess maybe you might see a little bit more Alphonse or Perrine maybe as you kind of go up the ranks.
You
But
know what?
that,
We're not, to be honest.
yeah.
And surprisingly so.
But yeah, other than that looks pretty as expected.
Same thing here. Even actually, Dwayne. I don't think I see Dwayne in the top half here, which is kind of surprising on attack. But defense, Dark is very, very solid, so not a surprise to see Dwayne there. Even Leela the Bold making an appearance there. I'm sure this changes a little bit here if we end up going top 25, but I don't think it actually changes that significantly. Well, I guess the ratios certainly do. Earth is out in full force here in the top 25, at least on attack and even on defense, making a really competitive case here. But seeing some Sadali in the wrinkle too, so interesting topical there.
Yeah, I know there's at least a couple guilds there that are running Earth exclusively. No
Yeah.
surprises there.
Yeah, yeah. Though honestly, I'm happy to see it because we did see Dark for so long. You know, if I were to expand this just even a couple days here, you'd see that pretty big decrease from where Dark had been. I obviously, you know, it's fun to see something get shaken up a little bit, and I think even if I were to narrow down on top 10, I think it pretty much looks pretty similar here. Yeah, okay, we got some extra Alphons. You got that's where you kind of get your Dialdo usage for the most part as well on offense, and pretty even spread for the rest of the way. But okay, what we expected. Yeah, no Perines though, no water. Alphonse relatively limited. Strike is just not a thing. It's like it is, but it's not. It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I think some guilds are mixing it in here and there, but maybe not critical mass to kind of get into the top 10 usage. I think Dark is going to shoot back up again here, though, in another month once Wrath comes out.
Oh, there's literally no doubt. They absolutely will. Yeah.
Be interesting to see what kind of impact, if any, the summer units end up making if they're coming along next week.
Yeah, I mean, if they were, I would imagine maybe that's where the Summer Jaden gets something like a 140 and obviously throw another wind unit into the mix. Maybe that's kind of why they're bringing this Earth dominance to kind of generate that wind demand, if you will.
Yeah.
That would make sense. But are you still running fire on this map?
No, I've finally switched off fire to Earth. So yeah, I've been using Dialdo, and there's still several people in my guild that are running fire, and it's actually a pretty good map for fire because Yuffie can get a pretty good one-on-one matchup on the left side.
Yep.
As long as you just make sure you're targeting somebody that can't hit her.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I've stuck with light for the meantime, but light has been just slightly less consistent this map just because of I think of how wide it is and some of the pathing that sometimes you can get stuck on either one side or the other of this giant structure, if you will.
Yeah, it really like sometimes like the DPS will be trying to chase it to one side and they end up kind of clipping one of your units because they can't get to the tank.
Yep.
Kind of makes it weird sometimes.
Yep. I actually, that was one of my big things with Dialdo in my testing. Innately, I thought, okay, give him move +1. That's going to be great to like get him where you want to. It actually backfires pretty significantly. So if I give Dialdo move +1,
So you go right up the middle.
no, he does something. So there we go. So Dialdo does something kind of interesting. So I'm running Warrior of Light, right? So I figure my Warrior Light starts here for the most part. I was putting Dialdo in this third slot down here with the hopes being that obviously like they kind of do one of these and sort of converge more towards somewhere in this middle. And that's just not what happens at all. You know, there's some agility timing on this, but Warrior Light moves up. And if you give Dialdo move +1, he'll actually move 4 squares that way and will stand right here trying to get around to Warrior of Light. And if you go moves 3, he will not. He'll go this way instead. So it's one of those things that's like if you don't get that move down properly, you're going to do some weird stuff trying to accomplish what you want.
Yeah, definitely have seen some funky things there that kind of makes it unpredictable, in some cases, depending on who moves first or second or what have you.
All right, that's essentially what we want to talk about for the War Room. Just really looking at the map this week and seeing if there's any changes from the metas that we'd seen. We will transition here now to the Leonis Spy Report, where we got the Melnia Vision card released, and this is quite the Vision card. 24% unit res, 32% reaction block, and 15% agility. So one of those that's getting the 2 out of the 3 stats that you like to see. Doesn't take much insight or analysis here, JB. This is a good Vision card?
I mean, I'm going to say that reaction block, like since the third anniversary, has been getting up there as something that I like to have and
Yep.
in every party as well. So I think they hit it out of the park with 3 out of 3, like really nice effects.
It's amazing.
And these cards that get you, at least 2, like the agility or unit or area resist on 1, huge enablers for any of these job groups here on the card. So we have guns, we've got what else we
Maces?
have guns, mace, and knights, I think are the 3 groups.
Yep. Yep. Sword Knight. And
And
Sword Knights have not gotten many good cards, so this is a big upgrade for them.
yeah, they needed both of those effects. So I think we're going to start seeing some really nice teams because there's a lot of good units in that knight group.
Yes. Most definitely. Yeah, I mean, obviously this does seem very Earth oriented, where you're kind of going down this list here, and there's obviously a lot of really good candidates that synergize well. But I think you can make the case that even when you start mixing in different elements here, you have a couple of units that stand alone very well. Celeste obviously being one of the best. We'll call them rainbow tanks in the game. I do think that Raph could be serviceable as a rainbow potential tank, depending upon what you end up bringing with her. But there's a lot of good units here that even have their own just strengths that don't require a lot of vision card input. I know Alaya is one of them. You can kind of just like let her go. She's got some good passives that and enough damage and utility in her kit that she doesn't need all this like fluff from the vision card. She still gets that job done. A lot of good units here overall. I'm very impressed with who they added.
The other thing that I was thinking about with Melania is mixing her with Alaya with their earth and ice combination with Dark Golem.
Great
Dark Golem
call.
gets you the area resist. This gets you the unit resist and agility. Bam, you got your party ready. So can use those 2 units together. Throw Dialdo, throw Snow in front. Either way. So
Yep.
I'm
Excellent
looking
call
forward to
out.
that combo.
Yes, that is a fantastic synergy just called out there. Definitely. And then the other thing here we're getting here is the Sahagin Prince. And this is a very unique Esper that we'll talk about in a second. But this one as a vision card is magic, but also attack oriented. It's that equal stat. It's 24 pierce attack, some crit evade, and 18 accuracy. So just a slight step down. Is this technically an MR card, by the way, or is this a UR card?
It's an MR card.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Just looking at the stats. So overall, I don't think it's an amazing card per se, but when you talk about Pierce units, I think it's valuable that they add another job-based fishing card here for them. We have just barely enough for Pierce units to be serviceable, almost entirely on their own. I think it's a nice one to add to it. Overall, thumbs up.
Yeah, I think it's a good free to play option, right? It's an MR card. It's going to cost less, so maybe in those limited situations where it's like a total team cost, it could be a pretty good thing to have. I know some of those other MR raid cards have been good that way. I just wanted to say though, I'm a little bit disappointed that Gumi has gone back to the free MR cards. Like I was kind of really enjoying when we got the FMA card, when we got the Dragon Quest card. They were
Yeah.
UR caliber. I'm sad to see them kind of go back to these kind of lower tier cards. I think that's for folks who don't spend as much on the game, those were good things to have for kind of getting into this new era of the game. So just throwing that in there.
Yeah, I agree. And to that point, they actually were some exceptionally good MR Vision cards, just not quite good enough. They were so close, but to your point, for those people that are coming into the game that just want some free vision cards, honestly, they were really, really good ones that hit a lot of marks. Just not enough to really put a dent for more of the general player base, but I'm sure there'll be a use for this at some point. The 8% agility and the 8% area resist
Really
certainly.
nice bestowed there.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
seems really attractive, obviously. The Esper is exceptionally unique here. That comes in at 16 agility, but the big thing, and this is a first, is that you can get another 5 agility on this Esper, making it the fastest in the game at 21 total. I mean, the rest of the tree here, you got some options for accuracy, which is really nice, getting up to 22 accuracy. There's a couple Espers that obviously can do that already, but as an MR Esper, to get that accuracy as well, in addition to the 5 agility, I also think you're getting that pierce attack there. We just talked about not having enough lightning res in the game. Obviously this is a water element, so they're weak to it anyway, but being able to kind of throw that into the mix to offset that weakness, overall, I think it's really well rounded.
Yeah, this is a really nice Esper. I've been really wanting any water Esper to be honest, but especially a water Esper that had high accuracy. So this is a first for the element that way. So obviously, when you're thinking about building up against fire evade, not only does this have the high accuracy, but it does also have the blind resistance, which is key for that matchup as well. So
How, and how did
really,
it?
really solid.
I don't know how I went over this. I missed the acquired AP portion of this too. That is very nice to add in the 25% acquired AP and Pierce Resonance, which goes with the vision card. Yeah, excellent board here.
Yeah, really solid Esper all around.
Well, then we'll segue here now to the Q&A, going over some of the questions that we received as of last week. Again, always thank you for these and keep them coming. This is some of our favorite things to talk about, quite honestly. So please get creative with what you want to ask. So question one here is that Gilgamesh's MA2 and EX were sizable power spikes to put him back in the meta, while the Transcendence seemed to be mostly a miss. What would you have done to differently to make him worth running? And just to recap what those were, it was 20 defense pen, 100 debuff res for all attack types, so weapon type imperils, all element imperils as well, so you literally cannot imperil him ever for those. Same thing for defense and spirit imperils, so you cannot imperil him at all on those. And it also gave him a Kotetsu upgrade here, where the big upgrade was an extra 30% hit chance. And honestly, it's funny to say that it mostly missed, but I think if you were to look at this, I mean, when's the last time you saw a unit get like what 6 things on a Transcendence? They went really heavy-handed here, but I would agree it didn't do enough to really bring him to the limelight. You have any thoughts as to maybe why that's the case?
So first of all, I 100% agree. This is actually an incredible upgrade. Like when you compared it to almost any other dream ability that exists in the game, most units are getting 3 effects, total. And these are all pretty nice effects. He gets a little bit of damage with the Kotetsu upgrade and the defense pen, which he sorely needed. And then some defensive upgrades, like you said, he can't be broken in those 4 types. So I don't know. I think that Gilgamesh really benefited, and the ice very long time of there being absolutely no fire threat in the game for the better part of several years. You think
Yep.
back to the Agrius days where she was very widely used because there was really not even any good fire units that could kill her. And I think that that's the exact opposite now. Fire is very, very strong. Ice is not being widely used, outside of maybe some, nice missile maps that can work for them, or in kind of rainbow situations. On the flip side, there's really not a ton of wind defensive targets because wind is in a little bit of a downswing as well. So I think there's some meta conditions, kind of a little bit behind the scenes. And I think the other thing with ice is that their best tank, Snow, is not 140 eligible yet. So Gilgamesh absolutely needs a tank in front of him, and Snow he's good, but he's not great like he was.
Right. It's funny. So I actually 140'd Gilgamesh about a week ago for the limited Guild Wars because I was running Howlet and Reagan, just really trying to stress test Ice. And the thing with Gilgamesh is he's not that far off. The biggest thing for Gilgamesh to me is still his squishiness. He's got no innate AoE resistance, no innate unit resistance. He's not easily one shot by a lot of things, but it's very close. 2 hits and he's just literally dead. And so I think that's kind of what they were trying to go here with the imperils, trying to make sure that he could resist them. Because if he was getting imperiled by anything, he would be getting one shot by everything. The fact that he can now at least resist these, I think, is his way to boost some of that survivability. That being said, he is more viable than I think people think he is. But I've said this before, and we talked about it before. The ice in its current phase with Reagan and Howlett is not as easy as plug and play and just send them out there and go. There's way more high level thought that goes into the spacing. Are they chaining properly? How many hits are they taking? Are they getting the heals off properly? And Gilgamesh is part of that. Katetsu is exceptionally good. When you talk about like Zombie Mask and Dark Fina for Dark re-raise and whatnot, Katetsu is still that giant AoE Dispel re-raise. Very, very powerful utility in that ability. And Gilgamesh still does that very well. He also has the Time Mage sub, so you talk about throwing a quick in and a haste in. That does still have some really good upside. It's hard to get right. You have to really think strategically. And I think that's more than what most people want to do when you can just throw Sephiroth in there and get similar results.
I mean, speaking of Sephiroth, I think that's another reason why it's a little bit harder to play some of those units that rely solely on that 50% barrier for the majority of their survivability.
Right.
And Gilgamesh kind of fits into that bucket. So,
but all hope is not lost. He definitely is still, out of all the ice slashers, he's up there. He's still one of the best ones. I think he's still better, obviously, than Valeric. I think he's better than Lastwell. I think he's still up there.
One thing I do want to mention is that JP has recently announced that their next sort of power creep and kind of retooling of old units is going to be around limit bursts. And I've said this before, but Gilgamesh notoriously has a beautiful limit burst animation, but it's a god-awful ability. It always has been. They didn't fix it ever. So I'm hoping that they finally get around to making that a good ability, and maybe that actually makes him better too. We'll have to see here in a couple months.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a glass cannon, and that means that sometimes you get broken. It's part of the nature of the build. All right, the next question we have here is a question for top guilds. What's the reward for being in the top 1 through 5 over being 300 to 500? It just doesn't seem worth it reward-wise. Maybe the reward is just being 1 through 5. I know Howl has been, still like top 20 to top 15, and you guys have been really competitive in certain things. Do you have any certain feelings about the rewards that they kind of give out for guild awards here?
I will say that the general notion that he has here is correct. I don't think the rewards overall are worth the time and effort that it takes to be there. I will say though that they're not worthless. Like if you think about guild medals, increasing your guild medal counts now allows you to buy scrolls. You can buy, you can buy things to increase your statues. I think there's even shards and things in there as well that you can buy. So. I mean, it's something, but again, it's not nearly enough for what it actually takes to get there. I think it's mostly you're playing for pride and competitive spirit for the most part.
I agree. I was trying to tally my Guild War rewards, and it got kind of muddled with the other prizes they give out. I think it was about 800 Guild War medals I get per win, though. So 800 per day. And just because of how much we've been awakening people right now and transcending them and reincarnating them, we're very light on Fragments of Thought and Awakening Prisms. You can actually exchange those in the Guild War. And I'm at the point now where that's actually the best use of my Guild War medals, and it's a very important thing for me to use. I've exhausted my friend medals. I've exhausted my pull tickets. So to me, it is actually still worth it because those are vital materials that I need. I do think it also gives out a whole bunch of other things like tokens and burst parts and armor pots that every single day do end up accumulating. I can literally easily max limit burst or max equipment level, basically anything on a whim, for not for free, but like basically for free. I haven't bought burst pots or anything in forever. Even on the weekly shops where they have them refreshed, I'm not diligent about buying them, but I somehow enough that I can literally do it for every unit and not even think twice. So the rewards, not amazing. For me, the ultimate reward, I agree, it's not worth it for your average player. Let's be real. But the upside to it is just that you get to play the game at a level that is just more fun. There is unfortunately a skill difference in between top 50, top 25, top 10. I'll be honest, even top 5. The difference in skill in top 5 to top 10 is a dramatic decrease in what you see. So the things you learn and the like ability to maximize your game experience is really the reward in itself. I agree. The tangible rewards really not there, but from a gaming experience, it's a dramatically enhanced gaming experience.
I will add to and kind of piggyback on that that when you're kind of in those heated matches that are very competitive, it it's up there among some of the better experiences that you can have in this game where, it's a dogfight and it goes down to like the last actions and you're sitting there at 2 or 3 in the morning and waiting for those last actions to come in to either seal the win for you because maybe they crash or whatever. Those are, some of the most fun, that I've had in this game, over the years. So
Yep. And if I could add to one other thing there, at the end of the day, this is just a video game. It's just pixels, so there's no real like purpose to it. It's just entertainment at the end of the day. But there is very much like an enhanced sense of purpose when you have something on the line to play for. And that when you're talking about just casually in the top 200 guilds, well, what you do doesn't really affect your guild win or loss. Doesn't really affect your teammates. You get 6 stars every single day, but you can still lose every single guild war. And you just kind of get to that point where, like, well, what am I really doing with this? Why am I spending the time? Why am I pulling the units? Am I really having fun? But you do get that enhanced sense of purpose because there's the accomplishment tied to it that really makes the game feel like it's worth something that you may not get otherwise. Right. And the third question here now, do you guys think there's any reason why there are literally zero physical stat weapon based vision cards for the bow class? Even in JP, as far as I'm aware, and I think they're correct, the only two that exist are both magic based and have at least one magic unit specified to it. Feels weird that they've been completely left out for the most part for job based vision cards. And I think here it's kind of just looking for some input on us, whether we agree, whether it's fair or not, maybe why and the rationale. I'm
so
looking right
so
now.
so so funny enough, the card that we just talked about, the Sahagin Prince, is like the first one that you could like if you're purely looking at like the base stats, like that's probably the most suitable one for like a physical, bow unit. The Like you said, the other three are magic base stat cards. Some of the effects are okay, like there's some accuracy in there, and the agility card from the Zoma one that I think is pretty rare, among the player base.
Yep.
What I will say is that, when you think back to kind of the various metas of the game, there is kind of a puppet strings effect from Gumi and kind of what they're pushing out in terms of the cards and units, elements, espers, whatever. This is another example of that where, maybe in year one, we didn't see certain elements pop up until the very end. We didn't see strike at all really in the game for the better part of 3 years. And now all of a sudden it's pretty common. This is one, in this particular era of the game, the job VC, they just haven't focused on it. And, the time will come for it. Maybe it will be next year, but there's just too many divisions that they can't focus on everything. And this is just kind of one that's on the cutting floor at the moment. And when you look at the units that are in there for bow, the newest highest cost unit is Satya.
Got it.
Sharice and Eliza are a
All
little
right.
bit newer.
No, if I had to take a wild guess, it'd be not that Gumi has abandoned these units. They obviously haven't, but there's a lot of units here that have just faded into the sunset. That, regardless of job-based vision cards, you just don't see them in mono element. The current list of bow units, this is it. This is all of them. And so if you were to really kind of filter down here, you talk about like who, all right, slime, whatever. Liarte is a rare unit, but very little usage. Uni, the same thing. They've had some limelight things recently because of reincarnations and some manual stuff, but once you get into the MRs, Curry's still one of the best. Fina has kind of fallen off. Lorila never really gone anywhere. But really, when you look at the UR units, most of these have kind of just faded into the sunset, quite frankly. Rosa, Nivlu, Winter Victoria, Summer Lilith have all really just kind of been left at the side of the road, regardless of the job-based vision cards. If I had to take a guess, though, at why they're not emphasizing it, it's obviously A, because there's not enough units to really take advantage of it in the truest sense. But also, I think it's B, because these types of units, the bow ones in particular, we were talking about this earlier. You can go for utility or you can go for damage, very rarely to get both. I think most of these bow units are intended to be mostly utility driven. they're not meant to blow you out of the water with pure damage like someone like Alaya is. They're really meant to influence in different ways. So when you talk about character abilities, vision cards really have nothing to do with abilities. The abilities are good regardless of the vision cards, just the potency of the damage can change. And so if you're talking about can you bring a bow unit and still have an impact in the battle, the answer is yes. And you don't need a whole bunch of stats for them to still necessarily get that done. Even from like an AoE or a unit resistance perspective, because they are further back, they're not taking the majority of hits. So although those stats are important, they're not as critically important as some of the other things. So I think from just like a priority standpoint, Gumi's kind of designed these jobs to be plug and play in the sense that you could probably put Eliza, and again she's kind of the top tier ones, but it's a good example. You could put Eliza near any team, not have any bow effects whatsoever, and she's probably going to still do an awesome job of getting the job done of having that ice resistance down, the decrease of move. She's also got the defense break. They have Dispel Protecting Shell. You don't need a vision card for that to be good. That's just innately good no matter what. So I think that's probably the angle they likely may be coming from, but just a guess.
Yeah, I think that's they kind of have kind of put themselves in this situation where they have all these different job groups, and they only put out 2 cards a month essentially. So they kind of have to focus and pick and choose where they're going to go.
Well, that's what I would think too,
So
but I don't think it kills them if they want to add bow on. That's not like there's a capacity limit to how many jobs you can put on a card. You could put 3 on or 5 on or 4 on. I don't think there's been any consistency yet in how many is minimum or max. So I agree with you. They have to pick and choose, but at the same time, it is I don't know if it's intentional that they've just not put bow on any of them. You know what I mean?
I wish they would more often put four jobs on the cards. I wish they would just make that standard. I don't like it when they only have 3 on there.
Yeah, no, definitely
Personally,
not.
it's one of my pet peeves with the system. They should be broadening it out a little bit more.
I agree. I agree. Well, that's everything that we wanted to talk about today. Again, there's a lot of content coming out, but not necessarily anything that I think is unexpected other than the timing of it. Galzahk being pushed and Dark Golem here now. Lots to look forward to. There's, really cool things here coming out with the +6 equipment and what that'll do for some of the game balance changes and the guild raid coming here now for some, breath of air for people that are looking for something different. But for now, that's all really we have to talk about. JB, any other thoughts you have today?
Yeah, good luck to everybody kind of focusing on those guild raids and pushing for those high scores. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to be joining you there, but maybe we'll see. But yeah, good luck if you're deciding to go for Dark Golem. I know that's can be a pretty rough banner. I'm going to try for him. Hopefully, crossing my fingers, it's not going to be too painful, but we'll see.
Same. At this point, God, I have to. I've always been one to try to pull for those Espers. They're just too good not to. Even if they don't seem that great, like Dark Remove, that vision card, a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh, these stats are kind of whatever. But man, these cards are just objectively better in many other ways. And I've always made it a point to try to pull them, and Dark Golem was no exception to that.
We'll cross our fingers for maybe a surprise, like decent banner, like even if it's paid, like if it's maybe got some good rates or something. Maybe it's Hopium. Copium.
It's definitely a blend of both. Gumi's got
Yep.
us by the you know. So
Yep.
all right, cool man. Well, thanks for watching again tonight, everybody, and we will see you all next week.